Welcome back once again, guys, to a new build video. So I know it's been a little while since I did my last one. Sorry, just didn't want to. But I've been getting some requests to do some for Maya, and she's one of the few characters that I feel I have some level of say in like what you should actually do on it. Well, yeah, so today we're going to be doing pretty much the ultimate guide for her. I'll be running through all of her skills, which order you should level them up, what her best weapons are, but honestly, she's one of those characters where you really can't go wrong with anything you do, either skill-wise or item-wise. She's extremely versatile. So why would you want to play Maya? Well, she's, again, like I said, extremely versatile. She's one of the few characters who can really do everything. She can kill every single raid boss, though she doesn't necessarily have great ways to kill most of them. She can be a very good supportive player if you want to play co-op. She's great in solo. She's great in normal, true, and ultimate Vault Hunter mode. She's pretty much just always powerful. She can solo all the content by herself. And she's just fun to play. And she has a very simple action skill. She's not as, like, tactically minded as someone like Zero or Axton, but isn't as just, like, balls to the walls as Salvador or Gage, where it's just go in and kill stuff. So it really hits a good mix between, like, trying to play well and not having to worry too much about how you're playing. So let's get straight into this. Before I start, please consider leaving a like or subscribing to the channel if you enjoy this. Every single comment, subscribe, and like is greatly, greatly appreciated. I read all comments. Leave it down below. Tell me where I'm wrong. All right, so let's just go ahead and get right into this. And I think we're going to go ahead and start with the skill tree because that's really where the whole character is at, and then we'll do the items afterwards. Before anyone asks, because I've been getting a lot of questions about the heads and skins I use, the head is from the Hammerlock DLC for beating it, and the skin is for having a game save on Borderlands 1. So obviously you have to get face lock. I'm sure probably most of you know what it is, but essentially you just use it on an enemy and they will become suspended in the air and they can't do anything during that. You essentially have a stun lock, and yeah. So if I do that, he's just stunned. It is what it is. Whatever tree you end up leveling up in normal Vault Hunter mode is entirely dependent on you, though I would personally recommend either doing middle or right tree throughout normal and true Vault Hunter mode. I really like the left tree and it's very good, but I don't feel that it provides enough to warrant getting it early game. So let's just go ahead and start over in the Cataclysm Tree, which is pretty much her damage skill tree. Her skill trees are pretty much chalked up to damage, healing, and utility, and a good build will use all of them together. So we're going to go through every single skill. I will tell you whether it's good or not, when it's good or not, whatever, and the order that I would typically level it up in. So you've got two options to start. You've got Flicker or Foresight. Foresight is just a really good skill. It gives bonus mag size and reload speed, which is really good on Maya because she only actually has 2 reload speed skills, Foresight and Inertia way over here, and this is a kill skill. I pretty much always get it because it's the only reload speed she'll actually receive, and pretty much the only mag size increases she'll receive too. So I will pretty much always max this out as I'm going. Then there is Flicker, which I don't personally get and I don't necessarily recommend, but it is good because essentially once it's maxed out, you're 30% more likely to do elemental effects with guns, and if I remember correctly, it's additive instead of multiplicative, meaning that like you can literally make an elemental Snider have 100% chance to proc that element. It is good. I personally don't find it good enough to spec into it, but a lot of people do, so it's up to you. Then you've got Immolate, and what this will do is when you're down, you will essentially, once it's maxed out, deal 50% bonus gun damage as incendiary damage, but I don't think it's a flat 50% because like you get crazy powerful while in Fight for Your Life. It's so broken that it used to be the way to insta-kill Hyperius. They fixed it since then, but you had like, she had crazy raid boss potential using this skill because it's so good. And yeah, just once you get down, you do a ton of damage. The issue is you have to get down for it. Yeah, I'm not really a huge fan of any skill that's reliant on getting down to use because it's like, well, if I spend those 5 skill points elsewhere into more damage or more healing or sustainability or survivability or whatever, then I won't get down in the first place and this skill will be useless. But at the same time, I usually actually get it. I normally go into Foresight straight to Immolate because it is just so powerful, and especially in early game and like True Vault Hunter mode, you'll never have problems getting back up. Plus, your other option here is Helios, which is not a very good skill. In normal and true Vault Hunter mode, I do actually get it quite often, but the damage of it is just so low. So essentially, once you phase lock an enemy, it causes a... I'll just read off the description. Phase locking an enemy causes a fiery explosion, damaging all nearby enemies. But you'll find that in this game, most things that over here on the left say damage rank 1 through 5, those skills almost always tend to suck, and they scale very, very bad. There are a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, you kind of want to stray away from those in UVHM, and especially the OP levels. In the OP levels, Helios is almost entirely useless. Even if you get it at 10 out of 5, it's still pretty bad. I get it anyway, honestly, just because I want to. I don't recommend it, though in early game, it is totally viable. It's actually a pretty good skill. Especially used in conjunction with some of the other skills, like with Ruin, which will slag them, or Converge, which will pull everyone in, so then Helios will hit. But I would probably skip it. I'd go Foresight into Immolate and then go down here. Chain Reaction is another one that I get every single time, because it is just ridiculously powerful. So essentially, when you phase lock an enemy, any bullet that you shoot at any enemy anywhere has a 40% chance to ricochet to another enemy. And by itself, that's pretty good, but it's not crazy, right? It's not blowing your mind with it. However, when you take into consideration using something like a shotgun, which has, sometimes 22 pellets or whatever, I think even 23 in some cases, all of those have a chance to ricochet and do more damage. And any weapon that has unlisted projectiles or that spew out a lot of projectiles gets crazy bonuses from chain reaction. So that's why that I like to use the Conference Call and the Pimpernel a lot. Because as you probably know, the Pimpernel, when you shoot it, it releases another bullet, and then that releases, I believe, 5 more in a star pattern. Yeah. So it's actually 7 total shots, and all 7 of those can hit the enemy and then proceed to ricochet to other enemies. So there's a lot of times where you'll ricochet it and it'll hit another enemy, and you're able to actually kill all the enemies around the phase lock target just by killing the phase lock target. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this. I pretty much always get it, and you can do entire builds based around it. It's also really good with like an infinity, where you can just spew out bullets, and bullets are just flying everywhere the whole time. Anything with a high fire rate, or unlisted projectiles, or listed projectiles, it doesn't really matter. If you do it with unlisted projectiles, you'll get like B shield damage. Then moving on to Backdraft, this skill is not at all good on its own, but you can make a very good build with it, actually, using some pretty specific gear. But essentially, your melee attacks deal fire damage, which is totally useless, who cares? She's not a melee character, I don't know why they gave her any melee skill. This essentially turns every single shield you have into a Nova shield. So once your shield is broken, you will release a big explosion of fire, which it does more damage than Helios, but it still doesn't do much damage. It doesn't do enough to warrant actually speccing into it. However, there is a build you can do using the Transformer shield, which is essentially just an absorb shield, but anytime you take shock damage, you actually recharge your shield. So you can use a Miss Moxie's shock slow hand and shoot yourself on the floor, which will instantly destroy your shield, but also bring it directly back up because it'll recharge it. And so you're able to spam this like crazy, and it actually does a lot of damage in that case, but I would never get this aside from that. That is the only case, is if you're doing a build specifically for it. Otherwise, it sucks. Then we've got Cloud Kill, which, as most of you know, is one of the most broken skills in the game. For anyone that doesn't know, it used to be literally probably the worst skill in the entire game. It did almost no damage, but then in 20 who knows what, it got a huge buff. And so when you shoot an enemy, it creates a cloud of gas in that area that will kill anything and everything that gets within that area. In Ultimate Vault Hunter mode and the OP levels, it's pretty balanced. It's, it'll like half health a lot of enemies. Some enemies it will be able to one-shot by itself. But in normal Vault Hunter mode and True Vault Hunter mode, it will literally one-shot Ultimate VA enemies and stuff, if they're slag. But it can one-shot VA enemies by itself. it will one-shot almost every single enemy, every single boss. It'll do big damage to. Not every single boss. There's some where it like has a hard time hitting them, but it's an incredibly good skill. A lot of people actually don't get it because it kind of makes the game too easy. So if you're worried about that, I would skip over it. But otherwise, I 100% recommend it. It's one of the best skills in the whole game. And especially on Maya, it is like a huge, huge damage skill. Moving on to Reaper. Reaper is another one that I get 100% of the time. Essentially, you deal more gun damage to an enemy when they have over 50% of their health left. And I'm not sure how the math works on it, but I know that the percentage is like, there are a lot of things that actually get buffed significantly more than they should with Reaper. So you're actually getting more damage than it looks like. But even if you're going by the baseline, that's still 40% more damage at all times, as long as the enemy is above 50% health, which is part of why, honestly, Maya is very good with sniper rifles. Because if you phase lock an enemy and slag them through Ruin, you'll have an enemy that's entirely stationary and you've got 40% gun damage. And with other class mods, you can get this up to like 100% bonus gun damage or whatever, which puts it in line with 0, honestly. And yeah, so I 100% recommend this in pretty much every single build, but especially every single time you go down Cataclysm, never skip this. It is one of the best skills for her damage-wise. This and Cloud Kill pretty much can carry you through the game. Then moving on to Blight Phoenix, as you can see, it's damage level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you probably know, that means that it does not scale well at all. In normal Vault Hunter mode, it's actually pretty good. In True Vault Hunter mode, it's okay. And then in UVHM, it's just not good. But what this does is when you kill an enemy, you get this giant radius around you where you deal constant incendiary and corrosive damage. Again, in UVHM and VOP levels, the damage is so minuscule that it's not worth anything, really. However, there is a hidden aspect to it where when you have it and when it's proc, a lot of times if a melee enemy comes up to hit you, they'll actually end up getting stunned by the damage from Blight Phoenix. So it works as crowd control, but it's pretty inconsistent. But for that reason, a lot of times people will put at least 1 point into it in their build. That way they get the utility from it, but there's no points maxing it out because the damage just isn't good. I do end up getting it to either 4 or 5 for the reason that if you get a kill and you have that radius going around, it doesn't do much damage to the enemies. However, if you have a healing weapon out, like a Grog Nozzle or a Ruby, the healing from all the damage you're dealing is actually pretty good on your own character. It's just that the damage is so low against the enemies that are, you know, OP 10 levels above you. They have damage reduction. They have crazy amounts of HP. The damage is still enough to heal you. So for that reason, I will often take it and keep it 4 or 5 points. And then Ruin, which is a really good capstone. It's a very simple capstone, but essentially just whenever you use phase lock on any enemy, it will apply every single elemental status effect to everyone nearby. Well, actually, it doesn't apply fire. You have to get Helios if you want that, but it applies everything else. So it'll slag, corrode, and electrocute all enemies in the radius of the phase lock. It's great because you can slag without needing a slag weapon out. And that is the number one part about it. Maya is a character that is really, really great at slagging without needing a slag weapon. Because between Ruin and Scorn, which we'll get to later, you literally don't need a slag weapon anywhere within your kit. And a lot of times I don't run one at all because you genuinely don't need it. And she also doesn't really need Moxie weapons. So like the Grog Nozzle, it's not required at all. But yeah, so that is her whole skill tree. If I was leveling it up as I was going, I'd go for max out Foresight, probably max out Immolate, max out Chain Reaction, get Cloud Kill, max out Reaper, and then typically I put 4 points into Blight Phoenix, and then 1 into Ruin, but the extra 4 points you could honestly put into whatever skill you want. They're all sorta meh, you know? I would recommend 1 in Blight Phoenix, but if you wanted Helios, go for Helios. If you want Flicker, go for Flicker. If you want Backdraft, go for Backdraft. Don't let me tell you what build to use. It's up to you. And yeah, so we simultaneously just went over her best and also worst skill tree in a way. It has the most skills that are just outright not good, being Blight Phoenix, Helios, Backdraft. But other than that, all of the skills you'll see in these next skill trees are genuinely just good. They're all good skills. There's no skill between these two skill trees, I guess, aside from Thoughtlock, that you can really go wrong with, but we'll go over that. So going down her Harmony skill tree, which is primarily a healing skill tree and a supportive skill tree, but it works great for solo and it does have some damage with it. So first we have Mind's Eye, which is a good skill. It's not crazy good, but it is recommended in a lot of builds. Essentially, it just gives you 25% bonus crit damage and 30% melee. The melee damage is entirely negligible. It does not matter. I don't know why they give melee skills to non-melee characters, but they do it. However, the 25% crit damage is actually pretty good, and it just makes you do a lot more damage whenever you're hitting your target in the crit. So it's one of those skills that's not bad to pick up. I don't always pick it up. In a full damage build, I will, but a lot of times I skip it and I go for other things because the rest of this tree is honestly better. So, Sweet Release. This is one of her best healing skills. Essentially, you phase lock an enemy and then kill that enemy. They will drop 5 different life orbs that will seek out you or your allies and will heal for up to 15% of your max health, depending on how low your health is. So if you're at max health, it won't do pretty much anything. But if you're at, 1 HP, it will launch your health up significantly, super, super quick. And it's great for playing on co-op too, because it goes for them. Plus, if you get a class mod that boosts it, you'll actually generate 10 orbs, which is a ton of healing and more than, I think, even like a transfusion grenade would be able to do. So yeah, I recommend this all the time. It's a very good early game healing skill, and it's just a very good skill, period. It's good late game, early game, OP levels, everywhere, it's good. Moving on to Wreck, which is the second damage skill in this tree. This essentially makes it so whenever you have an enemy phase locked, you'll deal bonus gun damage and you get bonus fire rate. And it's not a small amount. It's 50% bonus fire rate and 30% gun damage. A very good skill. I pretty much never skip this. It's rare that I ever don't get it. There are the occasional times that I skip it. It's so, so rare though. The trick with this is to phase lock an enemy and then use that time to attack all of the other enemies nearby while you have the bonus and then kill the phase lock target. Because if you aim straight for the phase lock target, you'll get the bonus gun damage and fire rate, but only for that one target, because it goes away as soon as phase lock ends. So anyway, good skill. Wreck, I recommend it. I get almost every time. Restoration is a skill that is kind of slept on, honestly. It's obviously good for co-op because what it does is it increases your max health by 15%, and also it makes it so if you shoot at an ally, you actually will heal them. Now, sometimes in co-op, it can be kind of difficult to hit your co-op partner, but if you're able to hit them, the healing is actually really, really good, especially at the OP levels, because your character's health does not scale into the OP levels, but the damage of your guns does. So if your gun is doing 1,000,000 damage, you're healing 30% of 1,000,000 per shot on your teammate, which is really freaking good. One main trick you can use with this is to use some sort of E-Tech rocket launcher with a big splash, either a Topnia or a PBFG. All you have to do is shoot remotely near your teammate and they will instantly go to max health without fail. So you can keep your teammate to be just an entire raid boss and have them never even have to risk death. So it's very, very good for that. Now, there is times that you want to use this in solo too. A lot of people don't really like health stacking. They think that adding a ton of HP is bad. I highly disagree with that. Health stacking is very viable, especially on Maya, even all the way up to OP10, where you just go for the biggest max health you possibly can. And it's genuinely a very good strategy. So adding 15% to your max health is very good. All right, enough with that. On to Res. This one, if you're playing co-op, get it. If you're not playing co-op, skip it. Very simple. Essentially just if your friend is playing and they get downed, you use phase lock on them and you instantly get them up. It works at almost any range, and that's all there is to it. You just res your friend. It's a 1 out of 1. If you're playing co-op, 100% get this. If you're not playing co-op, then whatever, doesn't matter. Then Recompense. This is another damage skill, sort of. Essentially, whenever you take health damage, not any damage, but damage to your health bar, your attacker has a 50% chance to do that same amount of damage back. By itself, this skill is honestly, it's okay. It's not like the craziest skill of all time, but it's not bad at all. It's a decent skill. You can use builds that will increase the chance to be 100%, so then it's very consistent every time. But also, there are certain occasions where you'll end up essentially insta-killing enemies because the amount of damage that they would have done to you is so high that you end up doing it to them. This is why Maya is actually able to one-shot Hatterax without doing anything, because Hatterax comes up and does so much damage with his first attack that he ends up proccing Recompense and does all of that damage to himself and will literally instantly die. Maya is the best character for Hatterax for that reason, because she literally just has to stand in the correct spot and she will win. I don't necessarily recommend it every single build you do, but it's not a bad skill to have, and especially if you want to farm up some world drops from Hatterax. Then moving on to Elated, this is one of my favorite skills in her entire kit. It's one of my favorite healing skills too. So what this does is while you have an enemy phase locked, you and anyone you're playing with regenerates 5% of your max health per second. And that may not sound like much, except you have to keep in mind, you're able to health stack like crazy because you can get restoration for 15% more max health. If you're using a nurse class mod, it will double that to 30% max health. Then if you use any sort of an adaptive shield or a rough rider, for instance, then add on a vitality relic, all of a sudden your health hits crazy numbers. In fact, let's see what we're at right now. So as you can see right here, I actually have 8 million max health currently. And so that means that whenever I phase lock a target, everyone in my game, regardless of how high their HP may be, they're healing 400,000 HP per second. And if I have the legendary nurse class mod on, they're actually healing 800,000 health per second. So they're getting almost 1 million HP back per second as long as I have an enemy phase locked, which is healing. It's like probably the best healing you can get in the game without Moxie weapons or whatever. So I highly recommend Elated, especially if you're using a build that properly works with it. It becomes really, really busted really, really quick. All right, and moving on to Sustenance. This is one that you can honestly skip. I normally end up getting it if I'm going down this skill tree, but you can skip it if you want. You constantly regen health. The lower your health, the more powerful that the regen is. So if you're down at like 0 HP, you just regen 2% of your missing health every single second. It's a decent skill, but it's definitely not required. Your other healing skills are going to be much better. I don't necessarily recommend it, but I do get it a lot. But honestly, you can skip it. Then moving on to Life Tap. This one is very good. You get 6% lifesteal after killing an enemy because it's a kill skill. So after you kill an enemy, you get 7 seconds where all of your damage, 6% of that goes back into your health bar, which again, this is one that actually gets better the higher and higher level you get, because in the OP levels, the weapons that you're using essentially are 10 levels higher than you, regardless of your health bar being normal level 80. So you're healing 6% of like 1 million damage or whatever. It fills up your health bar really, really quick. Plus, Life Tap actually works with Blight Phoenix. So 6% of the damage from Blight Phoenix will go back into your health for healing. This actually applies to every instance of damage that you can apply to someone. So if you end up hurting them through Recompense or Kinetic Reflection or Helios or Ruin or whatever, all of that will be healing you. It's a very good skill. I would not skip this one. This one is one of the better healing skills in this tree, but honestly, there are like 3 that are really good. All right, and then moving on to Scorn. This is one of 2 melee overrides in this game that are actually good. Essentially what it is when you throw, or when you press the melee key, you end up throwing this ball of slag that will slag everything within a huge radius around it. It is one of the best slagging tools in the game. The biggest thing is you just got to watch the cooldown down on the hotbar right there. But as soon as the cooldown is over, you can go ahead and just throw another one. So if you're mixing between using Scorn and slagging with Ruin, you literally never need a slag weapon out, and you'll just do all the slagging through your skills, which is really great. You can worry more about DPS and not worry about when to use what or when to swap gear, which is also good because Maya actually doesn't have any weapon swap speed. She doesn't have any skill that buffs it or anything, which is a big bummer. But yeah, so I highly recommend Scorn. A lot of times I go down the middle skill tree just to get it. And if you're playing on co-op, you can go ahead and go into your options, go to keyboard and mouse settings, change your key bindings, and set your melee button to mouse wheel, either mouse wheel down or mouse wheel up. And it doesn't work on solo, but if you're in co-op, you end up throwing, it depends on how quick you can do your mouse wheel, but you can end up throwing like 20 Scorn balls at once. It has something to do with being off host. I'm not sure what it is, but, and I'll play some footage of that right now.
Anyway, little intro. Oh, stop with the fucking, the Scorn. Stop with the Scorn.
All right, and now we can move on to her last skill tree, which is a good skill tree, but it lacks in damage or survivability. It's really just a utility tree, so that's why I don't really recommend it in the early game, but I do recommend it late game. For starters, both of these skills are very simple, but they're very good. Ward essentially just gives you 25% bonus shield capacity, which is a lot. and 40% less recharge delay, which is a lot. That's all it does. It's very good. She's very good with shields. Mix this with a skill coming up, and her shields can stay up pretty much all the time. Highly recommend it. The only time I don't recommend it is if you're using the Rough Rider, because it literally won't do anything. Moving on to Accelerate, this just increases damage and bullet speed. That's all it does, 15% bonus damage, 20% bullet speed. This is a good skill depending on what you're using. If you're using a weapon that has sort of a weird shot pattern, like the Pimpernel, it actually messes with where the bullets land. So you can see there's a big gap between where I shoot and then where the second pellet hits. That is a lot smaller from probably here to here when you're not spec'd into Accelerate. So Accelerate just depends on what you're using. If you're just using like the Sandhawk or something, I would spec into it. If you're using something like a Pimpernel or a Leadstorm or a Hail or whatever, I would probably stray away from it. Then there's Suspension, which again is a super simple skill. It just gives you 2.5 bonus seconds on phase lock, which by itself sounds decent but not crazy, except that's 2.5 more seconds of wreck, 2.5 more seconds of elated, and 2.5 more seconds of chain reaction. So, and those are all three extremely good skills, so you just get almost 3 more seconds added on to all of some of the best skills. Then we've got Kinetic Reflection, which it looks like there's a whole page of dialogue. It's really not that difficult. Essentially, it's a kill skill where when you kill an enemy, you get 100% chance to deflect bullets that are shot at you back at the enemies, which the actual damage dealt is whatever. It deals the normal amount. It deals 100% back to them. The big thing, though, is it gives you 50% damage reduction from bullets. So as long as you get a kill skill, you're getting 50% damage reduction from anyone else shooting at you. The only downside to this skill really is that it doesn't apply to any sort of melee attacks or anything like that. But anytime someone is shooting you and you're going through an area with a lot of bullet-based enemies, it's just going to give you damage reduction. And a little bit of free damage, but the damage isn't crazy, honestly. But I get this almost every build. I end up getting this. Then we've got Converge. When you phase lock an enemy, it does a singularity around that target. So every single enemy within the area will get sucked in, and it does a little bit of damage to them too. And yeah, so if you mix this with some other skills like Cloud Kill or Ruin or Chain Reaction, you phase lock them, they all get pulled in, which means they all get slagged, they can all be hit by the same Cloud Kill cloud, and they all get chain reacted from one another. So it's a very good skill. Anytime you go down the left skill tree, always get this. Super, super good. Then we've got Inertial, which is another kill skill. It's one of 2 skills for her that actually gives reload speed, and it's a huge 50% reload speed bonus. But it's only after a kill. It also gives you 4% of your max shields back per second, which is extremely good, as you might be able to guess. So between this and Ward, she's actually able to keep her shields up pretty darn well. And then mix that with the fact that your shield is just taking 50% less damage if you're using Kinetic Reflection, and you're able to keep your shields up pretty darn good. Then we've got Fleet, which I have a class mod on for. Let me take this off. So normally, what this will do is whenever your shields are depleted, you gain 50% bonus move speed, which no matter what shield you're using is useful. If you are using a B shield and you're poking in and out of cover to try and kill enemies, and then your shield ends up getting downed, you're able to sprint away and head over to cover and get out of the line of fire and regen your shield back up. So you can use it defensively, or if you're using a Rough Rider, for instance, this gives you a permanent capacity of 0 on your shield, meaning that for all intensive purposes, it is always depleted, meaning that you always get 50% bonus move speed. And Maya has a class mod that'll buff Fleet by 6, meaning you get 110% bonus to your move speed at all times with no downsides aside from the fact that your shield is down, except the Rough Rider gives such good stats that it doesn't matter if your shield is down. So I highly recommend Fleet. I recommend it with any build, but especially if you're using the Rough Rider, put your points into it. Then there's Quicken, which reduces your action skill cooldown rate by 30%. It's okay. It's a pretty good skill, but you have to keep in mind the fact that it only takes 13 seconds by default anyway. It only takes off like 3 seconds, which that's still taking off 3 seconds. The cooldown is so small anyway that it doesn't necessarily matter. A lot of people get it. I personally don't. It's not bad to get though. Then you've got Subsequence, which Every single point into this makes it so then after the phase lock target dies, there is a 20% chance that it will go seek out another target to phase lock. The issue here is it's incremental percentages, so if you just put 1 point into it, that just means that there's a 20% chance that it'll go to another person, and it is not good at 20%. Even at 40%, I wouldn't really recommend it. Once you get 3 points into it, then it's a 60% chance for it to chain. 4 is 80%, and then 5 out of 5 is 100% chance. You could probably get away with just doing 4 out of 5, and I think pretty much 90% of the time it would work. A lot of people end up kind of confused about this skill. They're thinking that every point you put in is just how many targets it'll go to. So they'll think like, oh, I put 5 into it, so it'll go to 5 new targets. That's not at all how it works. It's percentage based per thing. So if you have it at 5 out of 5, then every single time you kill a phase locked enemy, it'll fly to another enemy, no matter how many enemies that is, as long as it's within the duration of the phase lock. And then you've got Thought Lock, which is the one that changes the game the most, I'd say. What this does is it actually gets rid of your ability to phase lock and instead makes it so whenever you phase lock an enemy, they just become friendly, essentially, and they just start shooting at all of their allies. You also get bonus to the duration of phase lock by 4 seconds, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that the cooldown being increased is actually not true at all. I'm pretty sure it's bugged, so there's actually no penalty to bringing it. You just don't get to actually phase lock the enemy. What a lot of people may not realize is that all of the phase lock based skills do apply to this still. So if you run Thought Lock, Ruin still works. You'll still slag everything around. Converge still works. You still pull everything around. Subsequence will work. If the enemy dies, it'll go phase lock or Thought Lock another target. Chain Reaction still works while they're Thought Lock. Helios will proc every time. Thought Lock is not at all a bad skill. It changes the way that the game is played. If you enjoy that, then go for it. I rarely get it, but I think it's a very cool skill, and there are times that I do use it. I guess a very niche usage to this is if you're farming the Bulwark for the Rough Rider, you can actually Thought Lock him before killing any of his minions, and he'll come out of his rock, and you can kill him without having to go through the full mobbing beforehand. I guess I'll also mention the fact that with default phase lock, it lasts for 5 seconds. With Thought Lock, it ends up taking it to 9 seconds, and then you're able to get an extra 2.5 from suspension, and then if you have a class mod that maxes out suspension, pretty sure it gets to almost a 15-second phase lock duration, which is very good. But yeah, that is all of Maya's skill trees covered. Hopefully that was in-depth enough. Hopefully it's not too in-depth to where I lost you in there. But that is the full breakdown of all of them. I'm sorry if that took forever, but hopefully now you understand what each and every single one of her skills does and how good they are. So now I'm going to just go ahead and actually spec into some of these as I would. And I'll show off just 3 different builds that I'd typically end up using. So if I'm going for more of a damage build, as I'm playing through the game, I'm probably going to go for maxing out Foresight, then Immolate, then Chain Reaction, get Cloud Kill, max out Reaper, and then I put 4 points into Blight Phoenix. It's up to you. Since at this point you'd be early game, Blight Phoenix is actually still good. Then get Ruin. Then at this point, I'd swap over probably to the middle skill tree, especially because now we'd be in TVHM. I'd max out Sweet Release, max out Wreck. If I'm playing co-op at all, I'll put a point into Res. Then I would max out Elated. And then here I would kind of decide whether I want Sustenance, Recompense, Restoration, or Mind's Eye. Probably for solo, you want to go into Mind's Eye or Recompense. If I'm playing co-op though, I'll go ahead and put some points into Restoration. Now I'm going to max out Life Tap. Then I'm going to get Scorn. I now have 2 ways of slagging. And then going into Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, I might put 5 points into Ward, max out Kinetic Reflection, get Converge, max out Suspension, and then max out Fleet. And then I've got 2 points left. I could put it into Subsequence, but that will only give it a 40% chance, which is not very good odds. Instead, I would probably end up putting them somewhere more useful, probably 2 points into Inertia. Because a lot of shields only require, 1% charge to actually activate. So something like the Sham or the Antagonist, the Sham is especially a really big one. You only need even 10 charge on it for it to have a chance to absorb bullets. So by using Inertia, your shield will always be technically a little bit regened, even if you're getting shot. meaning that things like the sham or the antagonists or whatever are still able to proc. So this is probably what I do. This is a good like leveling up with damage sort of skill tree. Now, if you wanted to level up the middle skill tree first, as you're playing through the game, I would go for Sweet Release, then into Wreck, then I would max out Elated. If you're getting, again, if you're playing co-op, I'd go for Res. If you really just want the full healing, then you can max out Sustenance, max out Life Tap, and then max out Scorn. The thing is, this build right here will be lacking damage, so even if you want to go over here, you may not actually want to. You may want to go over into the right skill tree. However, if you're just trying to provide utility to your team, let's say this is a co-op build, like a co-op healing build, then I'd also go Restoration. But then you could go over here, maybe max out Ward, max out Suspension so you get bonuses to Elated, max out Fleet so you can run around the map and heal up your team, get Converge so then you can suck in all the enemies for your team, and then max out Quicken, and probably Subsequence so you can get your team more and more procs of Converge. And then for the last skills, it really doesn't matter too much. I'd say probably max out Foresight, and then probably Flicker for the bonus slag chance, assuming this is a sort of co-op build, and then Cloud Kill, Chain Reaction, and then you've got 1 point left. Put it wherever you want, maybe into, I don't know, Recompense. But what I typically end up doing most of my playthroughs is I'll go into the middle skill tree first for a solo build, because you really don't need the damage yet of Cloud Kill until like TVHM or UVHM. So I will go into Sweet Release for early game healing. I'll go into Wreck for damage, Elated for more early game healing. And then a lot of times I actually do pick Sustenance because early game it's pretty good because you don't have much healing early game. Max out Life Tap, go for Scorn, and now you've essentially beat normal Vault Hunter mode. Then moving into true Vault Hunter mode, I get Foresight, Immolate, Cloud Kill, Chain Reaction, Reaper. Put a few points into Blight Phoenix, grab that, and then just like before, you know, change these. A lot of times I use the Rough Rider, so I'll actually go Accelerate instead of Ward, and I typically go Kinetic Reflection instead of Suspension. Then max out Fleet, get Converge, and then again, I've got 5 points to spend wherever I want. A lot of times I'll go into Recompense, or Recompense. A lot of times I'll end up spending some points in Helios just for the fun of it, even though it's not that good. But I would say that the best option is either Inertia or Suspension. I typically like Suspension more than Inertia, but we've got 2 points to put into Inertia. So there you go. And that's about how I would level it up as I'm playing through the game. And I would recommend that you do it that way too, either down the right or middle first. I don't recommend the left first, but you could. Normal Vault Hunter mode is pretty easy, so it would work, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. All right, I think for the purpose of this is probably what I'll rock with. It's just a well-rounded build. Let's go ahead and move on to the items that I recommend with her. But again, like I was saying earlier, she can really use anything. She's one of those characters that everything works. Why do I keep doing that? She's one of those characters, and I tabbed out. Okay, she's one of those characters where everything works pretty darn well. I would say that she's best, though, with shotguns, snipers, and obviously SMGs. And in fact, let's go over the items down here first before we do that. So let's go ahead and start with grenades. This is literally anything you want. She works well with pretty much anything. I typically like to use singularity grenades or transfusion grenades because they just work well with her kit. She has a lot of options to use singularities and pull people in. So I use singularity grenades just to double down on that aspect. It's also very good for co-op to help crowd control the enemies for your team, especially if you're using like a Krieg, for instance, because you can pull them all in and he can blood split them. Or you could use a transfusion to help heal up your team. Or if you want to do like actual grenades, especially early game, it's very powerful. Use a fastball, use a rolling thunder if you really want, I guess. Use a bonus package, meteor strike, whatever you want. The grenade is the least impactful thing on Maya. She is not at all a grenade character. She has no bonuses for it, but she's not bad with them. They're still grenades. Then onto the relics, and I'll mention that everything I have on this character is legit farmed. That's why all my stuff is like imperfect. A lot of it I just didn't even care, like the Rough Rider I didn't even get OP10. But for relic, I mean, it's really up to you. But in my opinion, you've got two main options. Either go for a Bone of the Ancients for max damage in whatever element you're at, okay? If you're going through a fire area, like a flesh area, then obviously use Incendiary. If you're going through an area with robots, use Corrosive, blah, 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 yada, yada, you get that. or I use a lot of max health relics. So in this case, I've got one that I really like, which is bonus to max health, SMG ammo, and sniper ammo, which are what I primarily use on her. And that bonus health will be it'll be affected by restoration. I want to say that they work well together and boost each other a lot. I don't know though. But the max health will help with things like Elated. It will make Sweet Release end up healing more because your max health is increased. Sustenance will essentially be healing more per second. And yeah, and you'll be healing your teammates more per second as well. So I use a max health relic a lot of the time. If I'm struggling for damage, if I feel like the damage is kind of low, I'll swap to a different to a Bone of the Ancients, which I think we'll probably do for this area. For shields, she is one of the best shield characters in the whole game. She can literally use anything. My favorite shields for her, though, I would say are the Rough Rider, the Antagonist, the Black Hole, so you can suck them all in even more, the Evolution, which is just essentially a very good adaptive shield, or even the Neogenator, if you'd prefer. The Sham, which again, she's very, very good with the Sham, but the Sham is just always good, assuming you're fighting enemies with bullets, but it is very good. The Transformer is very good. The Blockade is very, very, very good because that actually gives bonuses that it reads off incorrectly, but it essentially just grants 50% damage reduction at all times, even though the item description would look to make it seem like it doesn't do that. It does. You get 50% damage reduction at all times, on top of it just being a, pretty decent shield. She's also good with just like any sort of turtle shield, really. She's very good. She's good with all shields, really. And also, obviously, the B shield, as everyone knows. But I think the B shield is very overrated on Maya. What a lot of people end up doing is they end up using the B shield and the Sandhawk for basic mobbing, but then they die all the time because they don't have any points spent elsewhere. They don't have points spent into, healing because they're maxed out damage and a B shield and a Sandhawk, and it's entirely overkill, and you don't need all of that. So this build is more than enough damage-wise where you should not need a B shield for anything aside from raid bosses or the occasional, Pistons blimp or something like that. So I don't recommend using a B shield on her most of the time, but she is very good with the B shield because she can keep it up very well. But I would say that my main shields that I swap between ever are a Rough Rider, an Evolution, an Antagonist, and I don't have one on here, but like a Sham. Those are probably your best options. For class mods, she has so many good class mods. She has unique class mods, but also all of her legendary ones that I apparently have multiple versions of right here. So a lot of times I use a Breakneck Banshee class mod, which will give me permanent fleet so I can move around extremely fast. But you don't really get many other bonuses aside from that. So sometimes when I'm going into combat, I'll swap to something else. One of my other favorite ones is a Blurred Trickster class mod, which will give you bonus fire rate. And on top of that, it will give you +6 to chain reaction and +5 to kinetic reflection. The +5 to kinetic reflection means that you get quote-unquote 100% damage reduction, which the way that damage reduction works in this game is weird. I don't know all the math behind it, but it doesn't make you invincible. But it does reduce the amount of damage the enemies do by a significant amount. And not only that, but it'll double the amount that they do to themselves when the bullets reflect back, which is very good. But the main thing here is that it gives your chain reaction an 88% chance to proc. Plus the bonus fire rate you're getting means that if you're using something like an Infinity on a phase lock target, every single bullet is spewing out because you've got insane fire rate, especially once you include Wreck, which will give you 50% fire rate on top of what you're already getting. And it'll make bullets just spew out like crazy and then chain react to everything in the nearby area. It is a super good class mod, and if you use that mixed with a Pimpernel, you're able to one-shot a lot of bosses like Saturn and the Bunker. And I'll also mention that technically the highest fire rate you can get on a Trickster class mod is 34%, but that's inaccurate. Any class mod in this game, I believe, that tells you it increases fire rate by a certain amount, it actually gives more than it says, and I believe that applies to accuracy as well. So even though the item card says 34% on a perfect Trickster, it actually gives you 52% bonus fire rate. So between that and Wreck, you're getting 100% bonus fire rate, along with whatever bonuses you've got to your damage or whatever. So very good class mod, and can be used to insta-kill bosses. Then you've got a warder class mod, which makes your shield insane. And yeah, it pretty much just makes your shield insane and makes ward insane. But you also get a 100% chance to reflect damage with recompense, which makes the Hatterack skill extremely consistent. So I recommend that. Then there's obviously the legendary cat class mod, which this is a very bad one. The bonus SMG damage can go up to 143%. So I'm missing 50% damage on this, but it's still more than enough. But it will make all of your SMGs essentially do double damage or 1.4 times damage, depending on if you have a perfect one. But not only that, it buffs skills that a lot of times I end up using the cat class mod on, like, when I'm using an assault rifle or something. Again, some of these skills I'm not spec'd into just because, like, accelerate, I use the Pimpernel a lot, so I wasn't spec'd into it. But if I'm using the cat class mod, I'll spec into it, because that will double the effects gun damage wise and bullet speed wise, which is great for a lot of SMGs. It will give you insane crit damage. It's like whatever it is at max, 60% or whatever, or 50%. It gives you a bonus to wreck, so you actually get 100% fire rate, 60% gun damage, and the biggest one, it gives you 80% damage on Reaper, which is huge, especially because Reaper stacks weird with some other damage sources, and it's a very good skill. And you get more reload and more mag size. So this is one of her best class mods. Even if you're not using SMGs, it's one of the best ones for pure damage. Then you've got the legendary binder, which is a very good one. It gives team cooldown rate, which I believe is actually accurate to what it says on the card. But it also gives just very, very good skills. You get a bonus to Sweet Release, which will give you 10 life orbs. You get a bonus to Wreck, which I already went over. A bonus to Reaper. It does max out Helios to 10 out of 5 when you're maxed. It makes it do a little bit of damage, but not much. But the big one here is that it makes suspension last, or it makes your phase lock last for 5 extra seconds, which doubles the duration by default, and will take it up to almost 15 when you're using Thought Lock. So very good. One of my favorite class mods to use. And then finally, for the ones that I would recommend, we've got the legendary Siren and the Nurse. The Nurse is okay in solo. It's definitely very good in co-op. It's okay in solo. Ideally, you actually have this at max level because the health regen passive on it is not good if it's under-leveled. So that one's a bad one. But this will give you Sweet Release, which we already went over. It gives you +5 to Restoration, which means 60% of the damage you're dealing goes into healing, and you get 30% max health, which that max health goes into making Elated do more, and Elated does more because it's doubled. It makes Sustenance heal you way more, and it makes it so you can phase lock enemies for longer to get more Elated value. Then finally, there is the legendary Siren, which is just a very good class mod. You can never go wrong with this one. This will give you cooldown rate, gun damage, and you may not notice, but down there on the left, it says it increases movement speed by 45% while phase lock is active. So if you phase lock an enemy, you just walk faster. You walk and run faster. Very good. And then the skills it boosts, just like other legendary class mods, it's pretty much just straight across the top. You get a bonus to ward, which is an insane 80% shield recharge delay, 50% shield capacity, more damage on accelerate, more bullet speed, more critical hit damage, more elemental like status effect chance, and more reload and more magazine. Whichever class mod you want just depends on your playstyle, depends on what you want. If you want to run around fast all the time, use the Breakneck Banshee, which is what I do honestly most of the time. If you're using weapons that work well with chain reaction, like a Conference Call, a Pimpernel, a Sandhawk, a whatever else, Infinity, Seraphim, I'd recommend the Blurred Trickster. But if you just want pure damage, I'd go Cat. If you want pure utility, I'd go for the Binder. If you want pure co-op, go for the Nurse. And yeah, but all of these can be used with any build. You can use a Cat class mod while going for a healing build to help make up for the fact that your damage is lower. So you can use this to essentially make up for that gap in your build. And the same, if you have like really bad healing, but you have a lot of damage, you might want to think about going for a Nurse class mod and putting, 1 point into Sweet Release, 1 point into blah, 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 1 point into here, 1 point in there. And it helps make up for that and essentially gives you like 30 free or 25 free skill points. And finally, we can get onto the guns, which again, like I said, she can use literally any. These are just my favorites right here. The ones that I put into my inventory were the ones that I deliberately picked as my favorite ones. The Sandhawk is obviously very good, especially because it gets bonuses from SMG gun damage. As we all know, there is B-hawking as a potential thing, which is very, very powerful. If you want to B-hawk, you can. I will not judge you for it, but it is not needed for anything outside of raid bosses. The Seraphim, which a lot of people sleep on because it's an assault rifle, but it is so powerful. It is such a good assault rifle. It's so good, especially on Maya. It's essentially just a doll assault rifle with just like way higher stats, way more damage and stuff. And I believe increased crit damage. Could be wrong about that. The Conference Call, which is just really, really good on her, especially with chain reaction. The Pimpernel, which again just works very well with chain reaction, and she's very, very good at using sniper rifles as a whole, because the enemies become stationary. Other options for her, obviously the Peak Opener is good. That's just good on anyone. I really like the Tattler on her, especially if you get it in an element. If you get it non-elemental, it's okay. It's not the best though. The Florentine is very powerful on her for the people that like to use that. And I know a lot of people might look at that and be like, well, just use the Sandhawk. Some people want to play for fun. They don't want to just play for the best build. Okay. The Sawbar is one of my favorites. She's obviously great with an Unkept Herald. She's good with the Maggie because it shoots out 6 pellets. And if you have a twofer, it'll shoot out 10. And all of those can get chain reaction bonuses. She can obviously flak or nuke them. She can use rockets well. She does really well with shotguns of all sorts. I really like the Sledge's shotgun on her. The Hellfire is very good on her. She's good with all E-Tech rocket launchers, especially for the fact that she's able to heal her team off of it. She's great with plasma casters of any sort. She's great with Sniders of any sort. And yeah, like a bunch of this is just random junk I have, but I can guarantee almost all of this is usable. I really like the Heartbreaker on her. I really like pretty much any of the Moxie weapons are great on her, but it's sort of a conundrum because Moxie weapons are great on her, except you don't need Moxie weapons. But yeah, so there you go. Literally use whatever gun you want. These are just the 4 that I find to be the best. And then probably like the Tattler and the Hail and the Florentine, I would say are like my favorites. And I don't have an Infinity on this character, but I actually really love the Infinity on her. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get into this. I'm actually going to respec just a tiny bit real quick to get more bonuses for my cat class mod. All right, I respec'd just a little bit to make the cat class mod a little bit better. Since I do have Accelerate, my Pimpernel is going to be a lot harder to hit. You can see that the bullet shoots very far up. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. Now, the Beatdown is a notoriously pretty difficult area of the game, so we'll see how it goes. So I want to be cycling between slagging them with my Ruin and slagging them with Scorn. And I'll even throw a slag Singularity at them, pull them all in, then pull them all in with Converge. And there you go. 2 enemies dead, just like that. And then Life Tap heals me up. And yeah, sometimes you will get a little low, or even get down if you're like me. Slag him up with that, and you can see with Immolate, it only takes a few shots to actually kill that guy. And everything just sort of dies. It's not even a contest. Now keep in mind, when you're playing at OP10, you do want to be using cover a lot more. You don't want to be running out into the open. If you do, you're going to end up dying. I think a lot of people don't think about that. They want to just run in and then complain that the game is too hard. A lot of times it's just that it's a skill issue. You don't have to be way in the back the whole time, especially on Maya. But you can see there, I killed that guy just by shooting the phase lock target. Also, you can hear that sound in the back the whole time. That sounds like someone like chanting into my ear. That's from Life Tap. If you really get annoyed by that, swap off Life Tap. Oh, I might actually die here. So I actually died there. I died to a dot. I'm actually going to swap over to the Evolution to reduce dot damage because dots are still very deadly, especially if you're not using things to max out your health. Because right now I'm going for more of a bit of a glass cannon. You can see that I only have 1.4 million health. But if we swap over to my Evolution, which I actually prefer, you can see that instantly health gates me because the ridiculous amount that it's about to give me. If I hit full HP right here, you'll see that my max is now... Sorry, I'm missing these guys like crazy. I've now got 4 million health, so it literally quadrupled my HP. And here's the Seraphim. Just takes a few bursts and they are completely dead. One thing to keep in mind while using Scorn is that it works over walls and stuff, and you ideally don't want to throw it directly at the enemy, but you want to throw it in an area where it's going to hit multiple enemies in a row. So there's a guy down in that hole, and there's a guy over there, so I'm going to throw it up above them, and Scorn should reach them. I don't know why I didn't reach that guy, but it reached that guy over there. This guy's dying even without Slag, because Maya is just so powerful. Pull them all in, and then they should all end up dying from chain reaction here. Yep, all three of them died through chain reaction and ruin. And I've got Scorn back up to Slag. And since I do have life tap, I can get one kill, and then all of a sudden I'll get healed up from everything else. Now keep in mind, I am currently using a Bone of the Ancients, so the damage is extra high because of that. But I don't even need to be slagging for the most part. But let's go ahead and swap off of that and put on a Blood of the Ancients. So you can see my health bar just shot up again, because now instead of 4 million health, I have almost 7 million, and yet my damage is still incredibly high. I killed that guy in just a few bursts. I used my Slag poorly, so I don't actually have Slag up. Oh. And you'll see Sweet Release just filled my health bar. No problem. I might actually die here because I used my Slag improperly. So I have no Phase Lock, no Scorn. Throw that out. If I can hit that guy, Immolate ends up doing a ton of damage. I just have to actually aim at him. And keep in mind, I mean, this is OP 10. So you can only imagine in normal and True Vault Hunter mode, or at OP 0 even, your damage is way higher than this. But literally everything's dying in, you know, 1 mag or less, which sounds like it's a lot. It's like, oh, he's taking 1 mag to die. But think about the fact that in OP 10, there's some enemies that literally take multiple magazines just for you to kill. Again, I apologize that this is a longer video, but I really want this to be in-depth. I want this to be the ultimate place you can come to if you want some Maya advice, and I will be showing off raid bosses in just a little bit. Here's this, what the Seraphim can do, if I shoot him in the head, actually. If I hit all the bullets in the head, it pretty much would have been a 2-burst kill. I just failed to do that. Here I'm going to play the cover a little bit because my health is low, and I'm missing every shot. Don't be afraid to use cover, guys. So there, it just 2-bursted him. We'll pull out the Conference Call a little bit. Got down to 1 HP. You can also tell that Cloud Kill, while still good, it's not nearly as good as it was in normal Vault Hunter mode. It doesn't carry like everyone says. I've gotten a lot of comments on my videos about Maya saying, oh, like, the reason I don't like playing Maya is because Cloud Kill's so broken. Even at OP 10, you insta-kill all the enemies. You're able to kill raid bosses with Cloud Kill, and I think that's just a lie. It is a very good skill, but it's not Cloud Kill doing all the damage here. I can guarantee if I unspec from Cloud Kill, these enemies would not be taking, like, any longer to die. Let's swap to something corrosive for these guys. Or just something that's not fire. I literally only have fire for some reason. You know what? Let's even try out the Florentine. I feel like a lot of people sleep on the Florentine. It seems like everyone either thinks it's the best gun in the game or think it's really bad. I'd say it's a mix. It is quite powerful, and what's nice about it is you don't have to swap to a slag weapon, then back. But you're definitely doing less damage than if you just slagged and used an on-element weapon. But it's still very good. I don't blame anyone that uses it. It's not necessarily my go-to weapon, but that's a super bad enemy that just got shredded in 1 mag. And if you're not slagging efficiently, I don't know how he didn't get slagged by Scorn there. If you're not slagging efficiently, you're going to do a lot less damage. Alright, and now I should get healed by Sweet Release, and all that damage I took should mean nothing. Sometimes it's good to have a slag weapon on hand still, because there are times like this where I don't actually have anything to slag. So this guy might actually end up killing me because of that. I got him. I'll phase lock that guy, so I start healing my health back up. Then get life tap. And then you can see through life tap, I can stand next to this guy, and I actually heal a little bit just from standing next to him. My bullets are disappearing from the world. Thank you, Borderlands. And I am not afraid to admit that I'm not the best player at all. I get down more than probably the average Joe. And this area is still pretty much a breeze. I did die at the very beginning due to an insane fire dot, which probably could have been prevented by me. But other than that, even me, I am not particularly getting down a crazy amount. Yeah, I'm not playing the best. I'm commentating while playing. And it's honestly fairly easy. But again, not as easy as Salvador. I'm not just running in with a Grog Nozzle and Unkept Herald and surviving, or, you know, whatever. I really dislike fighting these bikers. You can see she's perfectly fine with the peak opener. Granted, the peak opener is kind of broken, so it's like, shouldn't be a surprise. But she's just got so much build diversity. And yeah, that was literally the entirety of the beatdown, which is notoriously one of the hardest mobbing spots in the game. The enemies do a lot of damage. There's a lot of them. The dots are always really big on them. This is OP10, and even me, who, again, I'm really not the best player, I was able to get through only getting down a few times. I can guarantee that a better player than me would not have gone down during any of that. They wouldn't have died in the beginning like I did. But even to someone who's not very good at the game, I just know a lot, it's pretty darn powerful and pretty darn good. And you can always change this build up too. You can go for more survivability, go for more damage than this. If you really, really wanted, you could add on a B shield and you will literally just kill everything in like 2 seconds. There you can see when you add the B shield, literally everything gets one shot. And I don't like playing like that, but hey, I won't judge your journey. That's what you're about. Go for it. Just keep in mind that when you use the B shield, if I walk in here, I will die almost instantly. I just instantly got health gated. And I think a lot of confusion about this game comes from that, because people really think that, you know, you get health gated by every single thing in the game, which that's not true. But if you're using the B shield, that will be, because here, even with kinetic reflection doing damage reduction, I'm already in health gate. Alright, so here I have no kill skills active and my shield's recharged. You can see I can take a few shots, but then I'm instantly health gated again. So I don't recommend the B shield. It's definitely not the best option for basic mobbing, but it is for raid bossing, which we can get onto. Alright, so for raid bossing, honestly it's pretty simple with her. She's one of the characters that can really well just pretty much sandhawk and B shield through most every raid boss, which is nice because she can fight every raid boss, but she only really has like techniques to kill a few of them, and they're really RNG reliant. I was going to get all the kills for you guys, but I decided not to just because they are so RNG reliant, and some of them are just really annoying to go for, honestly. But the main one that I did is Hatterax, because it is incredibly consistent. It will work 100% of the time, and it's the easiest one to do. So going over the step-by-step for it, all you really need is you need points in recompense, and you need the Warder class mod that gives plus, I think you need +6 on recompense, but at least +5. And then pretty much just do it like normal. So go up the elevator, go ahead and spend all your iridium, and then after you activate the fight, immediately run back and flip the switch and drop down. You need to run over to directly where he spawns, so you either need a Breakneck Banshee class mod with a Rough Rider, or you can use the Toothpick and Retainer instead. But just run on over to the spot, and then I usually line myself up with this lighter texture in the ground. And then go ahead and take off your shield, slag yourself somehow. That only is required in OP10, but in OP10 you have to slag yourself. I use the Tulane. And then Hatterax comes up, you get stuck in his body, and he dies instantly. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can still kill Hatterax the normal way with just a Fire Conference Call and a Fire Lady Fist. And same pretty much applies to the Son of Cromarax, but with a Shock Conference Call. Deciduous, you unfortunately just have to use the Lady Fist and sit under the Lodge in Huntsman's Grotto. She really doesn't have any good kills on Veracitus. For the rest of the raid bosses, she does have a technique to insta-kill Terramorphous, but it's pretty much just Sandhawking with a B shield, swapping to the Lady Fist and downing yourself to get Immolate bonus. But it's like really inconsistent and hard to do, and it's really not that interesting because it's pretty much the same thing that you normally do. For Vermivorous, you are able to reflect kill him, but it's like weird to do, and I'm not even 100% sure how to do it, but I know that you can, and I'll be leaving the links to a bunch of people who have done this better than me in the description. For Hyperius, she actually has 2 ways to insta-kill him. She's very, very good at reflect killing, but you either have to use the kill skill stacking glitch, or you need to be using the kill skills outside of the arena, just the normal gunloaders, but it's very hard to do because you have to get them in, and then you only have 7 seconds, and yeah. For Master Gi, just go ahead and gate crush him. It is what it is. For Pete, you can do an insta-kill technique with the antagonist. It's another reflection kill. I'm just going to leave a link down to it below, but essentially you just drop all of your antagonists down, let the rats pick them up, and then have the rats shoot you, have it bounce off, shoot them, bounce off of them, go back to you, so on and so forth, and then you'll end up hitting damage cap, and you will insta-kill Pyro B without ever having to actually shoot at him. It's a very good strat, but it is incredibly inconsistent, and I don't necessarily recommend it. Plus, Pete's so easy anyways that it's like, just go for it. And then finally, the Ancient Dragons, you can also reflect kill with Helianth, and she again is one of the better characters for that, mostly because Kinetic Reflection will give her a 100% chance for the antagonist to be proccing. So yeah, she can actually take down the raid bosses pretty darn well. And if you don't want to use one of the RNG reliant strats, you can ultimately just sit there with a Beehawk, and she's very good at that because she will buff that build up a ton. One thing I do want to mention is that Maya does have a kill skill stacking glitch that can make her pretty much entirely invincible and let her get away with some really crazy stuff. So in order to do this, you just need to spec points into her skill backdraft, which will make it so you deplete a Nova when your shield goes down, then go over to the turret in Magnus's Lighthouse, and then just strip your shield and have your Nova destroy the turret. If it does, you should get your kill skills permanently. You'll get a stack of your kill skill permanently. So you're able to stack this up, 30 times or whatever. And what's great is her kill skills are actually really good, and they're really good for stacking because you've got Inertia, which will give you reload speed and shield regen. So with a ton of stacks, you will never have your shield be empty, and you can reload guns faster than you can shoot them a lot of times. You can max out Kinetic Reflection, which will make your damage with the reflected bullets insanely high, and you'll have a really high damage reduction from that, making you almost invincible. You can stack up Life Tap as well, so you'll be having like 100% lifesteal, The problem with that is it makes a sound effect, and that sound effect stacks per stack of it, and it becomes really annoying, and it blasts your ears out, so be careful with that. And then you can also get Blight Phoenix, which by default, Blight Phoenix, like we went over, isn't necessarily the greatest skill, but when you have 40 stacks of it, it actually can shred most enemies just by standing next to them. So kill skill stacking glitch is very good, especially for Kinetic Reflection, because it means that you always reflect bullets, which makes her reflect kills on some raid bosses a lot more consistent. And that about wraps it up. Again, I apologize, I did not mean for this to be so long, but hey, very in-depth guide for you. I'm sorry I didn't cover every single thing in this, and I apologize about not doing the raid bosses, but it is what it is. Please tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. If there's something different that you do, go ahead and tell me. If there's a different weapon or shield or something you like to use, go ahead and tell us in the comments so we can try them out. Please be sure to share this with anyone that you may want to, maybe your friends or something. And please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my content. Or if you've been watching my other videos, might as well subscribe. It's totally free. It helps me out. If you really want, you can become a member as well. Obviously, you don't have to become a member, but if you'd like to, you will be supporting me. And shout out to Tyler for being our one and only member right now. Big ups, Tyler. He is awesome. He's great. I love him. Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your whatever time it is, whether it's day, afternoon, evening. I don't care what it is. Have a great one. I will see you next time. Thank you all for the support. Peace out.